Hello everyone, I am Dr. Ramesh Gumasa, Assistant Professor in the Department of Civil Engineering at SR University, Warangal. So in this lecture, we'll discuss about Introduction to the Environmental Studies. So how many of you have noticed that summer are getting hotter over the last 5 to 10 years? Now think about it, it is a natural change or it is caused by human activities. Just think once. So, this course, Environmental Studies, which is about understanding exactly that. So, it is related to the natural changes which is caused by the human activities and how the climate is changing with respect to the last few years, last 5 to 10 years. So, what are the specific reasons and how the climate is changing? So, this will be discussed in this lecture, right? So, let me briefly tell you about this course, especially in this module. So, we'll start with the basic concepts, what environment means, and what is ecosystem. Then we will move to the different types of ecosystems like forests and aquatic systems. After that, we'll go deeper into structure of the ecosystems, right? The structure of ecosystems like producers, consumers, decomposers, and finally, we'll study how energy flows and how ecological balance is maintained in the ecosystem, right? So which is everything is interconnected, right? Everything is interconnected topic in the environment, right? So these are the topic we'll discuss about in this unit lecture. So let us begin with a basic question. What do we actually mean by environment, right? So what is mean by environment? Can you guess? Most of people thinks environment means forest, rivers or wildlife, right? But it is true. Is it true? That's incomplete answer, right? Environment is everything around us that affects the life, right? Environment is everything which is around us that affects our life. In a simple term, environment is the sum of all external conditions that influence how organisms live, grow, and survive. Right. So the basic simple definition of environment is it is the sum of all external conditions that influence how organisms live, grow, and survive. Now coming to the components of the environment. So there are mainly two components. So first one is biotic component and second one is abiotic component. Okay, so there are two components in the environment. So first one is biotic component and second one is abiotic component. So can you guess what is the meaning of biotic component and abiotic component? Biotic component means which is related to the living organisms. Biotic means living. So which includes plants, animals, microorganisms and humans, right? So the biotic means living, so which includes plants, animals, microorganisms, right? And you can see plants which produces food, right? plants produces food by using photosynthesis process with the help of sunlight. Next, animals which consume it, right? Plant produces the food and animals consume it, and microorganism which can break down this process, right? So plant can produce the food, animals consume the food, and microorganisms which is break down the food, right? Break down the whatever the dead organisms, right? So now you can connect all of them. If plants disappear, animals cannot survive, right? If plants disappear, animals cannot survive because animals are depends on the plants, right? Because plants are the primary producer in the environment, right? So biotic components are interdependent, right? So biotic components are interdependent, right? Next one is abiotic component. So abiotic, which means non-living. Biotic means living, and abiotic means non-living, right? By abiotic means non-living, but don't assume they are less important, which is also important, right? Even though non-living, but there is don't assume it is a non-important thing, right? Actually, which controls how life functions in the ecosystem, in the environment, right? So example, you can see air, water, soil, temperature, and sunlight. So which all are abiotic components in the environment or ecosystem, in the ecosystem, right? Air, water, soil, temperature, sunlight. Example, you can see without sunlight, plants cannot perform photosynthesis process, right? It cannot able to produce food, right? So without water, no biological process, right? So without sunlight, there is no chance of producing the food from the plants because of no photosynthesis. Similarly, without water, there is no biological process, right? And if you remove abiotic factors, and life stops immediately because we are completely dependent on abiotic factors like air, water, soil, temperature, and sunlight, right? Without these, we cannot survive. Now understand biotic and abiotic components and its importance individually, right? They continuously interact with each other. Like example, you can see plants which depends on sunlight and soil, right? The plants which depends on the sunlight and soil. Animals depends on plants depends on sunlight and soil, and animal depends on the plants, and microorganisms which depends on the organic matter, right? Plants depends on the sunlight and soil, animals depends on the plants, and third, microorganisms which depends on the organic matter. Like this is the interaction what sustains life, right? So this is the chain interactions, right? So one more important point here, environment is not just a natural system. It also includes like cities, industries, roads, buildings. Why? Why? Because they influence air quality, temperature, water flow, and human life. Right? So environment is not just natural system. It also includes infrastructure like cities, industries, roads, and buildings. So which is effect on air quality, temperature conditions, water quality, and also effect on human life, right? So when we talk about environment or when we discuss about the environment, We are not talking about the nature somewhere else, right? We are talking about the systems we are living right now, right? So now you can see the definition of environmental studies. So environmental studies actually means it is about understanding the relationships between humans and the environment, right? So the simple definition of environmental studies, which is nothing but understanding the relationship between the humans and environment. So you can see it is a multidisciplinary field, right? It is a multidisciplinary field that uses natural systems, human activities, and interaction between the natural system and human activities, right? So it is a multidisciplinary field that includes natural system, human activities, and interaction between them. And first, natural systems. So natural system is the first component in the environmental studies. So what is natural systems? This includes ecosystems, climate, water cycles, biodiversity, right? Natural system in that you can see which includes ecosystems, climate, water cycle, and biodiversity. And the second one is human activities like construction, transportation, industry, and agriculture. So these are some of the human activities, right? And third one is related to interaction between these two parameters. Like this is the most important part, interaction between the natural system and human activities, which is the important part. Example, you can see when we build a road, we cut the trees, we change the land use, we affect the drainage systems, and we increasing the temperature locally. That are human activities which is affecting a natural system, right? So human activities are affecting the natural system. If you ignore this interaction, you can create environmental problems, right? If you ignore this kind of problems or this kind of interaction, you can create environmental problems. So that is exactly what has happened in the most cities today. Because of these building some infrastructure related to the roads, we are cutting some trees, and we are changing the land use, and it is affecting on the water quality in terms of drainage, and it is affecting the climatic conditions in terms of temperature, etc., right? And coming to the nature of environmental studies, you can see this subject cannot be studied using only one field, right? So example, you can see pollution. For understanding the pollution, you need to understanding the chemistry, right? For pollution, you need to understand the chemistry and chemical cycles. Similarly, biology, you need to understand ecosystems and biodiversity. Next, climate. And for understanding climate, you need to understand about basic physics. And in terms of engineering, you can see some of the solutions are engineer based solutions for related to environment. And next one is economics, law and policies. You can see it is all about efficient resource use and sustainability, and related to the environmental regulations, right? These economics, law and policies, which are more focusing on optimized use of resources to achieving the sustainability by maintaining the environmental regulations, right? So based on this, you can assume that, or you can understand that no single discipline can solve environmental problems alone, right? No single discipline can solve environmental problems alone. So environmental studies is about understanding the impact, and making better decision. Right. The main understanding from this slide is environmental studies is about understanding the impact and making better decisions. Right. It is not about just knowledge. Right. It is not about knowledge and application, but we can understand the impact for taking the better decision. Right. And coming to the scope of environmental studies. So now let's move to the scope of environmental studies. This tells us what area this subject actually covers. Right. Natural resources. You can see the scope of environmental studies, which is broadly classified as first one is natural resources. What is natural resources? What is natural resources? Natural resources are the material which provided by the nature. Right. The simple meaning of natural resources. The natural resources are the materials which are provided by the nature so that we use for our survival and development purposes. Right. Natural resources are the materials which are provided by the nature that we can use for survival and development. Example, you can see water, forest, minerals, and energy. So these all are related to the examples of natural resources. You can also see some of the examples like coal and solar, which is also natural resources. And two types. You can see natural resources are two types. First one is renewable, and the second one is non-renewable. Renewable sources and non-renewable sources. So what is mean by renewable source? What is mean by renewable source? Renewable source is nothing but we can uh, reuse. Renewable source is nothing but so can be replenished in terms of example, you can see water, sunlight, and forest. So these are the renewable sources. We can reuse multiple times. These sources we can use multiple times, right? And coming to the non-renewable sources, so these are nothing but limited. Example like materials like coal, petroleum, and some other minerals, right? So related to the renewable sources like in terms of solar, wind, and non-renewable sources in terms of materials like coal and petroleum and some other minerals. The core focus of environmental studies, you can see this subject does not just identify resources. This subject does not identify the resources. It focusing on three things. First one is utilization, and second one is conservation, and third one is management. Right. So these are only important focusing points of the environmental studies. Right. Utilization. This is nothing but how we use the resources. Like example, you can see using water for irrigation. Right. And second one is related to the conservation. Conservation is nothing but preventing overuse and depletion of resource, right? So example, you can see rainwater harvesting. And third one is related to the management, which is nothing but planning for long-term use, right? Planning for long-term use. Like example, you can see sustainable mining practices. So the problem today is not lack of resources, but it is mismanagement of resources, right? Because of overuse lead to the depletion. Poor planning leads to environmental damage. As future engineers, you will directly deal with the natural resources, construction uses like sand, water, cement, energy. If you don't manage this properly, you can create long-term environmental problems. right? So this is the main focusing points of environmental studies like utilization, conservation, and management. And next one is related to the ecology and ecosystem. So previously we discussed natural resources, so what we use, right? So now we move to the next section or next part, how system function and what happen when we disturb them, right? So first one is ecology and ecosystems. So what is ecology? What is the general definition of ecology? Ecology is the study of relationship between the organisms and their environment, right? Ecology is nothing but which is the study of relationship between the organisms and their environment, right? And ecosystem, what is ecosystem? Ecology is clear, right? Ecology is the study of relationship between the organism and their environment. Ecosystem is the system where this interaction actually happen, right? Ecosystem, which is a system where all interaction will be happen. So in any ecosystem, three things are happening continuously. First one is organisms interacting with each other, right? Organisms are interacting with each other, and energy flowing through the system, right? First one is organisms are interacting with each other, and organisms interact with the environment, and energy flowing through the system, right? A simple example you can understand from this slide is, take a forest, plants produce food, right? Take an example of forest. In the forest, plants can produce food, right? But animals consume the plants, right? Plants produce the food, but animals consume the plants, and the decomposers recycle the waste, right? Decomposers recycle the waste. So this is not a random, it is a structured system, like starting from the producers like plants, and consumers like animals, and decomposers like microorganisms, right? It is a structured system in the structured ecosystem. So if one component is disturbed, the entire system will be affected, right? Example, you can see, if predators are removed, herbivores can increase, vegetation can be decreased, and the system will be unstable, right? And ecosystems maintain balance naturally, but only until human interfaces become excessive. So now the next part related to the environmental pollution. So this is where the most of real world problems come. So first one is pollution. So what is the general definition of the pollution? Pollution is the introduction of harmful substances into the environment, right? So in a simple term, you can define as, so it is the introduction of harmful substances into the environment, right? So there are different types of pollution. You can see three major types of pollutions are, first one is air pollution, and second one is water pollution, and third one is soil pollution, right? So air pollution, you can see the sources of air pollution is from the vehicles and from the industries. We can also see some of other examples are discharge of sewage waste, industrial waste, etc., related to the air pollution. And next one is soil pollution. So soil is polluted because of excessive use of chemicals and releasing of solid waste materials into the soil, right? So what will happen? So because of these effects, health problems can be occurred, and environment also damage, so that there is loss of biodiversity, right? So in this subject, environmental studies, which is also focused on how to reduce pollution, how to prevent this pollution, and how to manage waste management. And coming to the next scope, which is related to the social issues in the environment, like climatic changes and sustainable development, environmental ethics, and urban environmental problems, and followed by environmental policies and regulations, right? We need to protect our environment, so that we need to implement some policies and regulations so that we cannot harm the environment, right? So based on the protection acts, or based on the international agreements, so we can save our environment. And importance of environmental studies. So first one is protection of life support system, means that so we can ensure that so we can save our environment by quality of air, and quality of water, and fertile soil, right? So we can protect our life with the support systems like air, water, and soil. And second one is related to the sustainable development, like which promotes the use of resources to meet the needs of present without compromising needs for the future generations, right? So uh, we are optimizingly using the materials without excessive use, so that we future generation also they can access this kind of resources. And next one is related to the pollution controls, like we can able to identify the causes of pollution, and we can implement some strategies or methods to reducing and prevent this pollution. And which is also effect on biodiversity, so that we discussed in the previous slides. So by using these protection laws and agreements, so plants, animal species, ecosystem, everything we can maintain as a balance, so that we can protect our biodiversity. And next important thing is awareness and responsibility, which plays a crucial role. So awareness and responsible behavior of citizens, which is important, right? To take care of our environment, and legal and ethical understanding. So we need to take some legal policies and regulations, so that no one will harm to the environment, right? So we need to maintain a practice. Next one is related to the need for the environmental studies, especially in the engineering. So, what is the need of environmental studies in the engineering? Can you think? Because engineers plays a major role in infrastructure development, like you can see roads, buildings, and industries, etc., right? Engineers plays a crucial role in the infrastructure development and industrial growth, like you can see chemical industries, some manufacturing companies, etc. So engineers also plays a crucial role in the industrial growth. And resource utilization, like in terms of utilization of raw materials. Okay, so engineer plays a crucial role in these three domains, like infrastructure development, industrial growth, and resource utilization. So these activities are directly or indirectly impact on the environment, right? So engineering is also impacting the environment by using the infrastructure development, industrial growth, and resource utilization. Therefore, engineers must design a sustainable systems, and minimizing the environmental damage, and follow the environmental regulations and policies, right? We need to use optimized resources for the production of any product, and for development of any infrastructure. So the resource utilization should be optimum without excessive usage, right? So by following these, and controlling this environmental damage related to the pollution, air, water, soil pollution, and following some uh, regulation policies, we can controlling the environmental changes, right? So there is important role of engineers in the environmental studies. And coming to the summary of this today's lecture, so environment, which includes both biotic and abiotic components. Like biotic is nothing but a living component, and abiotic, which is nothing but non-living component. And environmental studies is multidisciplinary approach. Okay, it is not about single discipline. It is a combination of multidisciplinary approach, and which covers resources, ecosystem, and pollutions, followed by the some regulations and policies, right? It covers so many aspects, starting from the resources, ecosystems, pollution control methods, and some policies, and which is essential for, especially for achieving the sustainability, and for responsible development, right? So which is essential for sustainability and responsible development. Thank you.